Greetings to all lovers of historical mysteries and ancient artifacts. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey following the trail of one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries, crystal skulls that for decades were attributed to the Maya civilization. Imagine perfectly polished life-sized human skulls carved from a single piece of transparent quartz. These mysterious artifacts are surrounded by an aura of mystique and legends. They are attributed supernatural properties, the ability to heal diseases, predict the future, and even store knowledge of vanished civilizations. But what lies behind these amazing objects? Genuine heritage of ancient culture, or one of the most skillful hoaxes in the history of archaeology? Today, we will conduct a real investigation to separate facts from fiction and get closer to the truth. If you're interested in mysteries of ancient civilizations, enigmatic artifacts, and scientific detective stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore amazing mysteries of the past, relying on scientific facts and the latest discoveries of archaeologists and historians. And now, let's dive into the mysterious world of crystal skulls and try to understand whether they really are heritage of the ancient Maya or creations of a much later era. Let's begin with the fact that crystal skulls are a group of artifacts made from rock crystal, transparent quartz, in the shape of human skulls of various sizes and degrees of detail. Most famous among them are life-sized skulls that today are housed in the world's largest museums, including the British Museum in London and the Musée du Quai Branly in Paris. But perhaps the most famous is the so-called Mitchell-Hedges skull, also known as the Skull of Doom, which for a long time was considered the most mysterious and perfect of all. The history of crystal skulls appearing in the field of European science begins in the second half of the 19th century. It was then that the first specimens of these unusual artifacts began appearing in European museum collections. One of the first was a crystal skull acquired by the British Museum in 1867 from French antiquarian Eugene Boban. The seller claimed that the skull was found in Mexico and used by Aztec priests during rituals. Soon, a similar skull appeared in the collection of the Trocadero Museum in Paris, now the Musée du Quai Branly. These discoveries aroused considerable interest among the public and scholars. The 19th century was a time of active research into Central American civilization ruins, and finds related to Maya and Aztec cultures attracted special attention. Moreover, the Victorian era was distinguished by fascination with everything supernatural and occult, and crystal skulls fit perfectly into this cultural context. However, the real boom of interest in crystal skulls came in the 20th century and was connected with the story of the Mitchell-Hedges skull. According to legend, this skull was discovered in 1924 during excavations of the ancient Maya city of Lubantun in British Honduras, modern Belize. It was allegedly found by 17-year-old Anna Mitchell-Hedges, daughter of British adventurer and fortune hunter Frederick Albert Mitchell-Hedges. According to Anna, she discovered the skull under the altar of a ruined temple on her 17th birthday. This skull was distinguished by amazing detail. It was executed life-size from a single piece of transparent quartz, had a movable lower jaw, and was so precisely polished that it seemed to contradict the technological capabilities of the ancient Maya. Moreover, Anna and her father claimed that the skull possessed paranormal properties. It allegedly changed color, made strange sounds, and caused visions in those who looked at it for long periods. This story sounded so captivating that it quickly attracted attention not only from scholars, but also the general public. The Skull of Doom, as Anna named it, became a real sensation and spawned numerous theories about its origin and purpose. Some claimed that the skull was created by Atlanteans or other representatives of highly developed ancient civilizations. Others connected it with aliens who allegedly visited Earth in ancient times. Still others believed that the skull was a repository of ancient knowledge and could transmit it to those who possessed special abilities. Interest in crystal skulls was further fueled by publications in popular press and books, such as The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls by Chris Morton and Sari Louise Thomas, published in 1997. And in 2008, the film Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was released, which introduced this topic to an even wider audience. But let's step away from legends and turn to facts. What is actually known about the origin of crystal skulls? And what can modern science tell us about these mysterious artifacts? The first serious scientific analysis of crystal skulls was conducted in 1936 when British anthropologist Adrian Digby studied the skull from the British Museum collection. He noted that the material processing technologies did not correspond to those used in pre-Columbian America. However, full-scale scientific research became possible only with the development of modern technologies in the second half of the 20th century. In 1992, researchers from the British Museum analyzed the crystal skull from their collection using an electron microscope. The results were astonishing. Traces of processing with rotating metal tools were discovered on the skull's surface, tools that appeared in Europe only after the Industrial Revolution. Pre-Columbian masters of Central America worked with hard materials, using primitive tools and abrasive materials such as sand and water, which left completely different traces on surfaces. Similar studies were conducted on the skull from the Musée du Quai Branly in Paris, and the results were similar. Moreover, analysis of the quartz from which the skulls were made showed that it most likely comes from deposits in Brazil or Madagascar, not from Central America, as would be expected from genuine Maya or Aztec artifacts. As for the Mitchell-Hedges skull, its story turned out to be even more convoluted. In the 2000s, researchers discovered that, contrary to Anna Mitchell-Hedges' claims, her father never mentioned finding the skull in his detailed reports about the expedition to Lubantun. Moreover, documents showed that Frederick Mitchell-Hedges acquired the skull at a Sotheby's auction in London in 1943, almost 20 years after its supposed discovery in the jungles of Belize. In 2008, researchers from the Smithsonian Institution analyzed the Mitchell-Hedges skull using electron microscopy and computed tomography. The results confirmed that the skull was processed using modern tools and technologies unavailable to the ancient Maya. Experts concluded that the skull was manufactured in Europe, probably in the 19th or early 20th century. Thus, scientific research convincingly shows that the famous crystal skulls are not genuine artifacts of pre-Columbian America. But if this is so, then who, when, and why created them? The most likely version connects the appearance of crystal skulls with the boom of interest in ancient American civilizations that began in the 19th century after publication of famous works by John Lloyd Stephens and Frederick Catherwood, who explored Maya city ruins. Their colorful descriptions and illustrations generated enormous interest in this subject in Europe and the USA. At the same time, a market for antiquities and pre-Columbian American artifacts began to form. Demand for such items was high, and verifying their authenticity was difficult due to the lack of scientific knowledge about Maya and Aztec culture. This created ideal conditions for the appearance of forgeries, and crystal skulls were probably among them. Researchers suggest that most of the known crystal skulls were manufactured in Europe between the 1860s and 1930s. There are even specific versions regarding who might have been their creator. One of the most convincing hypotheses points to French antiquarian Eugene Boban, who sold the first crystal skull to the British Museum and had access to quartz processing workshops in Germany. Interestingly, the creators of crystal skulls, whoever they were, showed remarkable ingenuity and skill. Manufacturing such objects from a single piece of quartz is an extremely complex task, even using modern technologies. Quartz is one of the hardest minerals, 7 points on the Mohs scale, and its processing requires special skills and tools. Moreover, quartz easily splits with improper handling, making the creation of complex forms, such as a human skull, especially difficult. But if crystal skulls are 19th century forgeries, why do they continue to attract such attention and generate so many theories and legends? The answer to this question lies in the realm of psychology and cultural studies. Crystal skulls possess special aesthetic and symbolic power. The skull is one of the most powerful symbols in human culture, associated with death, immortality, wisdom, and transformation. And quartz crystal has been associated since ancient times with purity, enlightenment, and supernatural abilities. The combination of these symbols creates an object that literally captivates the imagination. Moreover, crystal skulls appeared in a cultural context that was particularly receptive to such artifacts. The late 19th to early 20th century was a period of active development of spiritualism, theosophy, and other occult movements. This was a time when Western culture actively sought alternative sources of spirituality and wisdom, turning to Eastern and ancient traditions. In this context, crystal skulls, allegedly connected with the mysterious Maya civilization, perfectly matched public demands. It's also interesting to note that legends about crystal skulls are largely products of Western imagination rather than authentic Maya or other Central American peoples' traditions. Skull imagery does indeed exist in Maya mythology and art, but it has completely different symbolic meaning and artistic embodiment. Real Maya artifacts related to death cult are stone or ceramic skull images, often decorated with carving or inlay. But nothing similar to crystal skulls existed among the Maya. This brings us to an important question. If crystal skulls are not genuine Maya artifacts, does this mean they lack any value or interest? Of course not. Even being a hoax, they remain remarkable examples of their creators' craftsmanship and important cultural artifacts of their time. They reflect Victorian and Edwardian era fascination with exotic cultures and occultism, and in this sense are genuine historical testimonies. Moreover, crystal skulls became a kind of cultural phenomenon that influenced popular culture, literature, and cinema. They inspired numerous books, films, and works of art, from the already mentioned Indiana Jones to works by contemporary artists and designers. In this sense, they continue to live and influence our culture, regardless of their origin. Particularly interesting is how legends about crystal skulls continue to evolve in the modern context. In the age of internet and social networks, they acquire new details and interpretations, becoming part of broader narratives about ancient knowledge, lost civilizations, and cosmic contacts. This shows how myths and legends continue to form and transform in our time, even when scientific data would seemingly debunk them. At the same time, the story of crystal skulls serves as an important lesson about the necessity of critical thinking and scientific approach to investigating the past. It shows how easily we can succumb to the charm of a beautiful legend and how important it is to verify facts, especially when dealing with such mysterious and imagination-appealing objects. It's also worth noting that scientific debunking of the crystal skull myth in no way diminishes the achievements of the real Maya civilization. The Maya created one of the most impressive cultures of pre-Columbian America, with developed writing, complex mathematics, advanced astronomy, and magnificent architecture. Their genuine artifacts, carved stelae, ceramics, jewelry, testify to the highest level of craftsmanship and artistic taste. And these real achievements are far more impressive than any invented legends. Interestingly, some aspects of the crystal skull myth still have indirect connection with the real culture of the Maya and other Central American peoples. For example, skull cults did indeed exist in ancient Mesoamerican cultures related to concepts of death and rebirth. The Aztecs, in particular, created so-called zompantli, walls of real human skulls, as well as stone skull images known as chacmuls. Moreover, rock crystal was indeed used for ritual and decorative purposes by many ancient cultures, including the Maya. Archaeologists find quartz and other semi-precious stone artifacts in Maya burials and temple complexes. However, these artifacts have completely different form and style than the famous crystal skulls. Another interesting aspect of the crystal skull story is how they influenced the development of modern New Age and neo-pagan movements. Many followers of these movements continue to believe in the mystical properties of crystal skulls, despite scientific evidence of their recent origin. For them, these objects became important symbols of connection with ancient wisdom and alternative sources of spirituality. Particularly noteworthy in this context are modern replicas of crystal skulls created by craftsmen around the world. These new skulls, often made from various minerals, not only quartz but also amethyst, rose quartz, jade, and other stones, are used in various esoteric practices, from meditation to healing. Thus, the crystal skull myth continues to live and evolve, creating new cultural and spiritual phenomena. As for the original crystal skulls, most of them are now in museum collections, where they are exhibited not as genuine Maya artifacts, but as interesting examples of 19th century hoaxes and objects that had significant influence on popular culture. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, after Anna Mitchell-Hedges' death in 2007, was sold and is now in a private collection. Interestingly, even after scientific debunking of the myth about the ancient origin of crystal skulls, they continue to attract thousands of museum visitors. People still experience awe looking at these mysterious objects, regardless of whether they believe in their supernatural properties or simply value them as works of art and testimonies to human ingenuity. Summarizing our investigation, we can confidently say that the famous crystal skulls are not genuine artifacts of Maya civilization or other pre-Columbian American cultures. Scientific research convincingly shows that they were created in Europe in the 19th to early 20th century, probably to satisfy growing demand for exotic antiquities. However, this doesn't make the story of crystal skulls less interesting or significant. On the contrary, it opens before us a fascinating chapter in the history of archaeology, the antiquarian market, and the formation of cultural myths. It shows how complexly science, commerce, faith, and imagination interweave in our perception of the past. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us of the necessity of critical thinking and scientific approach when encountering mysterious and imagination-appealing artifacts. Ultimately, the truth about crystal skulls is no less fascinating than the myths that have grown around them. This is a story about human ingenuity, about the power of symbols, and about our relentless thirst for mysteries and wonders. And perhaps this is exactly why crystal skulls continue to fascinate us, even when we know the truth about their origin. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating journey, following the trail of one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for notifications about new episodes. And in the comments, tell us what you think about crystal skulls. Do you believe in their mystical properties despite scientific evidence of their recent origin? Or perhaps you know about other mysterious artifacts whose story requires investigation. In upcoming episodes, we'll continue exploring fascinating mysteries of the past, from enigmatic archaeological finds to little-known historical events that changed the course of history. Stay with us because history is full of amazing mysteries, and some of them are still waiting to be solved. Until next time.